And we'll hear from the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How will Labor's new tax cuts provide cost of living relief to members of the Australian Defence Force, to public servants in the Department of Defence and also to workers in our great Australian defence industries?
Call to order. Member for Fisher hadn't even called the Deputy Prime Minister and you were interjecting. So that's a warning for everyone else in the chamber not to interject before a minister answers or when a question is being asked. Give the call to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for his question and acknowledge his service and his commitment to Australia's Defence Force and his tireless advocacy on behalf of Australia's defence families. Every member of the Australian Defence Force, every public servant in the Department of Defence, every person working in Australia's defence industry will receive a tax cut under Labor's tax plan. And what that means is that those people who are serving our nation through their involvement in Australia's defence establishment will now be able to take home more of what they earn through a tax cut, which is deeply deserved. For example, an Air Force sergeant working at RAF Base Amberley on Australia's Super Hornets will now have a tax cut of more than $2,400. A sub-lieutenant doing anti-warfare training at HMAS Watson in Sydney will have a tax cut of more than $2,000. In the member's own electorate, a captain in one brigade at Darwin will have a tax cut of $2,880. And here, a defence civilian working at Defence's call centre at Cooma, not so far from here, will receive a tax cut of $1,463, which is more than twice the tax cut that person would have received under the policy of those opposite. Now, since coming to power, we've been completely focused on cost of living pressures, which have been persistent. But the most important step that we can take is to fight on behalf of Australia's working families for a tax cut. Now, clearly, the Prime Minister has taken a difficult decision in bringing forward this tax package with the Treasurer and the Finance Minister. But for all that is said by those opposite, if we judge them by what they do and not by what they say, it is clear that they agree the Prime Minister has made the right call. Because if they didn't, the only honest and credible position they could take would be to oppose this legislation and in this parliament and do what the Deputy Leader of the Opposition said, and that is roll this package back. The Liberals in power were a high-taxing government.
Order. Deputy Prime Minister will resume his seat. I'll hear from the member for Canning.
Relevance, Speaker. That was a dicta in the purest sense. There was no reference at all to the opposition. It was a question. Tell us how good you are. That was
I'll deal. Order. I'll deal with the point of order. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting immediately. The Treasurer will cease interjecting. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. Will be warned. The Deputy Prime Minister was not asked about alternative approaches. He was not asked about order. He was asked about tax policy, and he was not asked about the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. I'll bring him back to the question.
Now, evidently a shell of an opposition, but the government, which is actually delivering real tax relief for Australians, which has delivered a budget surplus, which is supporting Australia's Defence Force and our national security, that government is the Albanese Labor government.